every war, every recession, every inflation spike, every foreign policy decision. At the root of almost all of them, you will find one thing: energy. The country that controls energy controls the price of everything: food, manufacturing, transportation, heating, defense, and right now the global energy map is being redrawn faster than at any point in the last 100 years. In 2025, for the first time in modern history, renewable energy sources overtook coal as the world's largest source of electricity. 34% from renewables, 33% from coal. A threshold that just a decade ago seemed impossible. Yet fossil fuels still make up 86.2% of all global primary energy supply. The old map has not been replaced. It is being contested. And the countries that understand this map will hold the power of the 21st century. First, the old map. Because despite the renewable revolution, fossil fuels still run the world. Global oil consumption reached 103 million barrels per day in 2025, a new record. The primary controllers of this market, OPEC Plus, led by Saudi Arabia, and the UAE, which together control the tap that sets the global oil price. In 2025, both Saudi Arabia and the UAE increased production, Saudi Arabia by 6%, the UAE by 7%, flooding markets to maintain price influence. Natural gas, the second pillar of the fossil fuel map. Russia, despite sanctions and the Ukraine war, remains the world's largest gas reserve holder. Europe spent 2022 and 2023 in an energy crisis precisely because it had built its economy on Russian gas. The lesson cost Europe hundreds of billions in economic damage. Europe responded by shifting to American LNG, and in 2025, the United States expanded its LNG exports by 27%. America has quietly become Europe's energy supplier. Coal still the single largest source of electricity globally at 32.6%. China dominates. Its coal consumption remains the highest of any nation. India's coal use is rising. And perhaps surprisingly, the United States increased its own coal production by 4% in 2025 under renewed domestic energy policy. Now the new map, and it tells a story that would have seemed like science fiction a decade ago. In 2025, wind and solar together accounted for 17% of all global electricity compared to less than 5% just 10 years ago. More importantly, solar power alone grew by 30% in 2025, reaching 8.7% of global electricity generation, surpassing wind for the first time. The dominant player in this new map is not the United States, it is China. In May 2025, China installed its 1 trillionth watt of solar capacity. 1 terawatt. China's combined wind and solar capacity now exceeds its thermal capacity, coal, and gas for the first time in the country's history. China manufactures approximately 80% of the world's solar panels. It controls the supply chain of the new energy map as completely as Saudi Arabia controls oil. The United States is not standing still. 26% of U.S. electricity now comes from renewable sources, up significantly from a decade ago. The IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, invested $369 billion in clean energy manufacturing, bringing solar, battery, and EV production back to American soil. But the gap between American and Chinese renewable capacity is significant. And the country that dominates solar panel and battery manufacturing controls the supply chain of the 21st century energy economy. Here is the critical connection most people miss. Energy is not just a utility. It is the foundation of every price in the economy. When Russia cut gas supplies to Europe in 2022, European electricity prices rose 300 to 400%. Factories shut down, inflation reached 20% in some countries, governments fell, all because of one energy source from one country. The United States avoided this because of one transformational decision made a decade earlier, the shale revolution. The hydraulic fracturing of American rock formations that turned the United States from the world's largest oil importer into its largest producer, pumping more oil and gas than any country in history. In 2025, the USA increased crude oil production by 3% and natural gas by 4% simultaneously. This energy independence is America's single greatest geopolitical advantage of the 21st century. The United States is now supplying liquefied natural gas to Europe, replacing Russian energy at scale and earning billions in export revenue while simultaneously weakening Russia's financial position. The EIA projects that by 2030, low emissions energy sources will account for 50% of global electricity generation. The energy map of 2030 will look dramatically different from today. And the countries positioning themselves now in manufacturing, in infrastructure, in policy will control it. So, what does the energy map look like in 5 years and who wins? The EIA forecasts that solar PV will overtake both wind and nuclear as the world's largest single clean electricity source by 2026. By 2029, solar will surpass even hydropower. The pace of this transition is without precedent in energy history. The winners of the new map are emerging clearly. Countries with abundant renewable resources, sunshine, wind, coastlines that are simultaneously investing in manufacturing and grid infrastructure. The United States, with its vast geography, existing industrial base, and landmark clean energy investment through the IRA, is positioned to be a major winner. Australia, with the world's best solar and wind resources per capita, is actively planning to become a renewable energy exporter. The losers are equally visible. Petrostates Saudi Arabia, Russia, Iraq, Nigeria, whose entire national budgets depend on oil revenue that will face structural decline as the energy transition accelerates. Russia's budget already runs on oil and gas at over 30% of federal revenue. Every percentage point of the renewable transition that reduces global oil demand reduces Russian state power. The energy map is the power map. And for the first time in 150 years, it is being redrawn. The question for America and every nation on this map is whether they will lead that redrawing or be left behind by it. The energy map of 2025 tells two stories simultaneously. The old map, fossil fuels, still dominates at 86% of primary energy, oil at 103 million barrels per day, coal still powering 32% of global electricity, gas pipelines still defining foreign policy, and the new map, renewables, overtaking coal in electricity for the first time, solar growing 30% in a single year. China's solar capacity hitting 1 terawatt. The EIA projecting clean energy at 50% of electricity by 2030. The United States sits at a unique position on both maps. The world's largest oil and gas producer, one of the largest renewable investors, a net energy exporter for the first time in modern history.